Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing you insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide you with an actionable perspective on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Hi, everyone. This is your host, Ruby Powers, your companion through the ever-evolving landscape of law practice management. And each episode, we're going to get to hear from our guest about their journey to success, their superpowers, and a lot more of interesting things. So I'm really excited to have Marc Matheny today. He and I met a couple of years ago through the ABA Law Practice Division. We're on a couple of committees and boards at different times each year, or we just hang out at the meetings that we have. And so just I was really excited to have him on today because he and I are serving on the ABA TECHSHOW board. And he has gone to ABA TECHSHOW since 2001 and been on the board for 5 years. But anyway, a little bit more about him. He is in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he has practices several areas of civil and criminal litigation during his career, including probate and family law, as well as business and injury litigation. Marc, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you. I've actually cut down my practice. I'm 68 this week.
Oh, happy birthday. Happy birthday.
So as I have aged like a fine wine, I have found that you can't practice effectively in every area of law. So the only areas that I practice anymore are in probate litigation and civil litigation.
Okay.
So
so how did we really want to talk a lot about like the evolution of legal tech and ABA TECHSHOW, since you've seen a span of 23, 24 years or so. So what got you first into even attending your first ABA TECHSHOW?
Well, the first time I attended ABA TECHSHOW, I was a guest of the Indiana State Bar Association, who was a partner, who sent me to ABA TECHSHOW because they felt that they wanted me to improve our Indiana Solo Small Firm Conference, and I needed to meet people that would be speaking and presenting at TECHSHOW, which I thought was a great idea. And as soon as I went to ABA TECHSHOW, I fell in love with it.
What was one of the first things that happened? Like, what are some of those a key highlight that happened when you went to the ABA TECHSHOW?
Well, the very first time I went, which was in 2001, I went to one of the Taste of TECHSHOW dinners, and I met two wonderful people, Catherine Sanders Reach and Britt Lorish. And as we were sitting at dinner, but they told me they were telling me about digital dictation and possibilities for doing things through not live communication. And it just flashed in my head, wow, I won't need to have a live paralegal to do most of my work anymore. So I was one of the first lawyers that I know of that actually had a remote paralegal as his primary source of research, study, and work around the office. And that was in 2001. My paralegal at the time loved it because she was a new mom and she could work from home. And instead of being an employee, she became a 1099 contract employee. And she was actually with me until last year.
Oh, wow.
Long relationship.
I'm really curious because I'm trying to think back in 2001 what my tech situation was. But like, what was your, tech stack like? Because people who've been practicing more recently, and you have to think like, when was internet faster, or cell phones and like computers, and like how slow, or like were we all still using desktops and laptops? Anyway, so like you made it work no matter what your tech stack was at the time.
Right. I remember when I got my first 286 in the mid 80s. My friend and colleague said, "Oh my God, Marc, you're never going to need any more space on your computer. You've got 43 megs on your hard drive."
I'm always running out of space on my phone, and it's got like I don't know how many gigs.
With 5 1/4 3/4 floppies and 3.5 floppies. And I had my first fax machine and my first copier were both thermal fax and a thermal copy machine. So.
Wow. So I was working on my chapter for the upcoming book about like the future, the past, the present, and the future practice of law. So anyway, my brain's just like going to that a little bit, but that's more about law practice management. But a lot of it is intertwined with the tech that we have available. So what was like another memorable like moment? Because like just this last year, it was, or I mean, in February 2024, it was all about AI. But I'm like, what were some of the other like big years where you remember like the themes or like aha moments that you're that were notable?
Well, the things that struck me, I remember the 25-year anniversary of TechShow. I was on the board. I was just entering the board at the year the 25 anniversary, and we had a lot of people that the founders of the LP section, Andy Atkins and Jay Foonberg and people like that. And we're talking about using battery phones that look like, a small,
Right.
they're about this big,
Yeah, right.
in a bag, and pagers and things like that from the very first years that we're involved in tech. And then as it's evolved, I think that just the computer technology is just, we never could have imagined what computer technology would have been able to do back then. Maybe in the wildest science fiction movies, but it's so changed and so wonderful, actually, of what we can do, that we went, 2 years of our practice away from the office in 2020 and 2021 without batting an eye.
Has it always been a little combination of trade show slash CLE slash meeting of the minds, or have you seen like an evolution in the format?
There's been an evolution in the format. When we first run, when I was first on ABA Tech Show, we were forbidden to have vendors speak from the podium. It was just not allowed.
Huh.
And it was also not allowed to have non-lawyers speak unless a lawyer spoke, a practicing lawyer with a license spoke. And those were some of the CLE requirements at the time. Now we see speakers like Ben Shore that basically carry the day by themselves. And that's, of course, Ben, I think, is my favorite speaker of all time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that I instantly bond and connect with people I meet there and just feel like we're just speaking the same language and have a shared enthusiasm about like-minded things. I mean, I've always found that there seems to be a combination between like a law practice management and legal tech. There's a lot of intertwine in interest, and even the CLE programming, there's a lot about law practice management. What have you seen some of the biggest changes since you in solo small firm management practice since you started your firm? Because you started it in 1980.
That is correct. Like I said, in 1980, I didn't even have a Selectric yet. I had a typewriter and I had a secretary. And like I said, it was several years, probably 3 or 4 years before we had a fax line. And it was and that first fax machine was a thermal fax that ran on thermal paper and printed almost in reverse, and you had to read it. Copy paper, carbon, everything has changed since I started practice.
Was it expensive where you're like, I don't want to receive a fax? Like, I'm only going to send a fax for a really good cost.
No, it wasn't expensive. What was expensive, I think my first 286 was oh man, probably
that's a computer
with a monitor and a printer was well over $1,000 in.
I'm listening to the Jobs biography, so it's It's sort of like I'm thinking about like just the way things were and just sort of like the evolution of and where things came from and um, that's so true. Like the internet wasn't as readily available, or computers were bigger, they were more expensive. The data was harder to save. Like we didn't really have like email until later. Like so, you were sort of limited into how I mean, what was it like? You used a typewriters and then you mailed everything and you talked on the phone a lot. I mean, sorry
Yeah.
for asking, like, but that's okay.
Yeah, it sounds like ancient history. It wasn't. Um, but I remember having an AOL email address, which was the first email address that I had. Um, and then I think it was Ross that told me, "Get out of AOL, Mark. You're stupid. It's not secure. They can get all your stuff is out there for everyone to see." And we didn't even think about law firm security like that at the time.
Mm, yeah.
Firm security.
So, do you remember any like other major events? Like, what have you seen in terms of the themes in over the more recent years? And because my first ABA Tech Show was 2019, and I remember a presentation about AI, and I was really mesmerized and was just like, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating, and I was super energized by the whole experience. But like have you noticed like sort of like it seems there's always security, I guess, but like there's more efficiency, things are getting faster, things are getting a little bit like cheaper, more accessible, those types of things.
Well, I think that my first experience with the internet was with Westlaw, um, from a legal point of view, where you could look up online your cases. They for a long time you got your monthly, you got or even maybe it was quarterly, you got a CD with the newest cases when you had your
Mm,
first versions of Westlaw, and that was just a huge leap to be able to look at a case that had been decided. Wow, this week. So that was I think that online, the move to the cloud is probably the biggest leap that I've seen. I think that when things went to the cloud, it was a huge revolution. And that wasn't right away. I mean, it was, I'd been going to Tech Show a few years before.
well,
Uh,
in some respects, but a lot of case management software started considering that or being more in that space in like what, '08
I
or
No, I had my first version of Abacus
uh-huh.
and it was a standalone. I had that in 1999.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
uh, Again, maybe I was ahead of my time a little bit, but I look back at that first case management system, and it was primitive, but it
Mhm.
was simple. It was really simple. It ran on DOS commands, so it wasn't fully integrated into. You had to know DOS commands as well as Windows 95 or whatever the case. I can't remember which version we were running in 1999 when I first got it, but it was actually a promo demo that one of the vendors.
That's awesome. And I was just thinking, like, what would life be like if without having to spend so much time in inbox, because email wasn't as prevalent. Like maybe attorneys probably got email before a lot of clients got email. And you had to. I mean, how did you predominantly communicate? Mostly over letters or phone
Yeah,
calls?
I used to send out 100 letters a week in U.S. mail correspondence. I think I sent out about 5 now a week. So, and that might be even more, even less, because a lot of them I do on my letterhead, electronic letterhead, and just send them out by email as an attachment now. But everything you were dependent on the U.S. Postal Service. Of course, it was much more efficient then than it is now, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, that's how you communicated with clients, is by phone and by letter. And if you couldn't reach them, there were really no other. I don't think that email became prevalent until, I don't know, the mid 2000s. very few clients had usable email that you could use to communicate with them.
Oh, right. Because like even if they had an email account, they might not check it regularly or use it as like a mode of communication. It's just sort of fascinating because I've never really relied on mail to communicate with clients, except if it's I have to prove that I tried to reach them, or it's the only way I can file something to the government, like USCIS. I was actually writing about that in one of my chapters about like how to communicate with clients. And because a lot of like staff that's a little bit younger generation than mine just doesn't want to pick up the phone. I mean, sometimes I don't want to pick up the phone either because I know it could take longer than what an email could be. But then now you have so many different ways for people to communicate with you. It must just be like a whole nother. Well, speaking of all these evolution, like so what do you think about the delivery of legal services? It's a lot easier, better, like, or if you lost a little bit of the personal touch because it's more distance and digital, or how would you describe it?
Oh, I can't. I'd never go back. I would never go back to the office. And my clients, I think that clients have evolved slower than lawyers have evolved. And there are still many, 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 especially of my older clients, that some of which are younger than me, that just insists on, live in-person communication, or going through documents live in person and signing them in the office because they don't trust, DocuSign or whatever the case, your signature platforms. But for me, I could never go back to the way we used to practice. It wouldn't be fun. I'd probably be retired. It was just, although in some ways we work longer now because we have more time to take on more things, which is ironic.
So like because of the efficiency, you fill up the time with more because like I heard this quote or this idea that like with AI and everything that we'll be able to work less because we'll spend less time doing what we normally do. But you're right. Like what if we just fill the void with more work or substance or something like that?
I think that's my problem. My personal issue is that I've used the extra time I have to take on more clients, to take on more work. For example, when you open an estate, I do a lot of probate work. Just to open an estate, it's about 20 different legal documents that have to be filed to open an estate, maybe more, but that's about average. If you had to even using primitive word processing to go through that and make those documents that now they're just, forms that you cut and paste, fill in the blanks, something that used to take a day or two might be able to be done in an hour. So it's just made, but of course, realistically, the client doesn't have to pay as much to do the automated work because I can get it done much faster.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, so you pass on that sort of seems to be like this idea that if we can build in more efficiencies with our time, then we could pass on some savings, not necessarily like completely undercut the value. We have to charge for that value, but we could pass on the savings and then help fill the access to justice gap or the latent market that otherwise wouldn't have hired an attorney likely.
Yeah, I definitely feel that we've been able to help clients that maybe, at least I do, help clients that otherwise couldn't be able to do what we have. I do a lot of pro bono and modest means cases for clients. I'm on the state bars referral and the local bars referral list for modest means, and I also help out legal aid, have for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about this, which is I think firms should be trying to improve and be as efficient as possible. for one, just to be able to be more profitable, and two, not necessarily in any particular order with the numbers, but to be able to pass on that savings and to fill that void of the group that normally, either doesn't feel like they can afford, or it doesn't feel like an attorney is within reach, and still be able to have that help. No, I agree. It's just it's sort of it's a fun like walk down memory lane thinking about the evolution of tech. I'll have to confess, I've been watching The Wire at the beginning. I didn't know about this show, but it's like I think it's filmed in like early 2002 or 2001 or something, 2002. So I'm like just thinking about how they're trying to do an operation of like a criminal investigation, and they're using pagers and payphones, and they're using like little cards, and they're having to old school analog type of stuff. And I'm just like, or they have to go to the government office to research the LLC, like who owns what, and the shell companies or whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God, we could do that like a click of a button from like anywhere, as long as we have internet, and our logins. And like, just, it's such a huge shift. And, we can't take that for granted. But the point of that, talking about this journey, is like, well, where are we headed? Like, okay, so we've talked about the tech has changed, the speed has gotten faster, the data has gotten, there's more availability. And then our clients and ourselves have changed our mindsets. But then at the same time, we can pass on some savings. We can save some time. What do we do with that new time? Get more cases, get more business. What do we actually just pause and stop and like smell the roses and actually take a proper lunch and walk away from our computer? I don't know.
I still don't do that. Something's built in me that's almost type AA, and I have to always be working. But at the, I think about work too much, but it does help. It really does help. What really helps is, like, for example, today, I did some electronic filing this morning, filed about, I don't know, half a dozen different things. And I just thought about it. Wow, I just did that in a couple minutes, and that would have required getting in my car, driving to the courthouse, filing with the clerk with 5, copies, getting them all stamped, mailing them by physical mail.
Yeah. I think we both were like trailblazers within when we got out into the practice, and it's great that I'm serving on the ABA Tech Show board with you. My first time, I guess your fifth time. And I'm just like a fly on the wall, like soaking I'm mixing metaphors, but whatever. I'm like soaking up a lot, from everything, from all of our meetings, and just how things are done, and why we're doing things. And I'm excited to, when we start really planning out the content, because we're stewards of those conversations in the continued legal education, which I see you've done a lot of work in CLE. Like, why have you dedicated so much energy to organizing CLEs and being on boards in this space?
I just think that you need to, we're in a profession. We're not in a job. We need to give back to the profession. Where would we be if we didn't have our profession? Mm-hmm. And I just have a really strong feeling.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, I don't, this is my only major profession or career I've had, so I don't really know what it's like. I mean, I know like doctors and other professionals have, their continued education units or whatever it may be, but yeah, and I think once you've been practicing a while, there's a sense of a duty to give back. Well, so I appreciate all of your insight, and I think we're helping organize the 40th ABA Tech Show, and so we have some interesting things in store, which we can't disclose, and I don't even know what they all are. But in terms of, I think, like reviewing the history of tech and tech show as well. But we like to ask all of our guests a little bit more about themselves. So what would you say is your favorite game, board game, video game, some type of game?
Well, I'm not much of a gamer, although when Windows 95 came out and they introduced free cell, I became instantly addicted. So free cell is my vice, and everybody knows it.
Okay, next question. What would you consider your superpower?
I don't have a superpower. I'm not, but I do have a strange ability to recollect things. I'm from Indianapolis, and I've worked in racing my entire adult life, actually since I was a teenager. I probably would have been a mechanic on a car or something if I hadn't been a lawyer. And I have this strange ability to tell you who finished 32nd in the 1967 Indy 500. So
Wow. Does that come into help play like in the practice of law? Like you remember random facts about people who talk to you, even if they don't hire, or a client you've had gazillion years ago?
Yeah, I do, but it's strange when a client will come in and you say, "Wait a minute, there's a conflict here." I'm gonna just a second. I'm gonna shut my window. I'm getting reflection.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for me, I'll recognize faces or random stories, but I don't remember their names generally. So I usually start telling a story because because the firm's 15 years old, but some of my staff has been only a few years or whatever. So trying to sort of like the institutional knowledge. But so what were you saying? What you remember about clients?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting a terrible. It's a reflection of a car in the parking lot that's flashing my face. Just a second.
Okay.
Well, it's not going to go away. It's only getting worse.
Oh no.
The sun is reflecting off a car in my parking lot.
Oh, okay. Well,
maybe I can move over.
Yeah, I think if you move to that side, then you're fine. Well, so that's great if you have that such a great memory. And so how would you want if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how would you say how they can find you?
The best way is I've got a really easy website. It's marcmatheneylaw.com, and it has all my contact information at marcmatheneylaw.com. It's a secure website. I always tell people that's the easiest way to find me. I do have a phone, but nobody uses phones anymore.
Actually, I think I'm going to start adding this as my new question, but maybe I won't. But anyway, what do you think about the fax? Can we get rid of the fax machine? Do we give ourselves permission?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I've gotten, we have an electronic,
Yeah, we do too.
Digital fax. We don't have a paper fax. I get 2 or 3 faxes a year.
I know. But I still waste like real estate on my stupid business card with the freaking fax number on it. So I'm like, no, I was talking at a bar association, CLE, the other day, and someone was like, do we still have to have a fax machine? And I was like, I want to give ourselves permission to get rid of it. We probably don't have the machines anymore, but like the electronic number and just having to announce it and put it somewhere on their website and a business card. Okay, so we can reach you on your.
Although if you're in the medical malpractice field or personal injury field, doctors and medical reports are all sent. If you don't get them, they're sent by fax, not by email. Even because there's a security question that has been drilled into doctors, and the car just moved. Thank God.
Oh. Yeah, that was my only concern, was that we might need it for that purposes. Well, thank you so much, Marc. I know you have a lot of wisdom and experience, and I'm glad that we were able to talk sort of like a journey through legal tech and of law, as well as sort of an overview of the years of ABA Tech Show. So any other closing thought about legal tech and ABA Tech Show, and why you serve on the board and why you like going?
The thing I can say is and this is honest, I thought last year's ABA Tech Show may have been the best one ever. Since I've been going, and I've been, I wasn't on the board, I wasn't doing anything, but it was the explosion of AI was just such a phenomenon last year. And legal tech is just evolving. I mean, so every year it's something new, every year it's something better. So we can't look to the past, but we can look to the future every year.
That's true. And it's a little bit overwhelming because I remember when we could get away with auditing our tech maybe once every year or 2 years, but now it's almost like you need to review it quarterly and evaluate your operations alongside, because what can this program do now? How does that change your operations? I mean, literally, I spent probably hour and a half on conversations just like this earlier today with my office manager and other vendors, because this is where we're at, and trying to run a most efficient firm as possible is what I'm trying to achieve, not only for profitability and my staff to save time, but to pass that on and to reach more clients as well. Well, Mark, it's always been a pleasure, and I know it's been fun. We went to the Beatles in Vegas last year, and I know that was you're always keeping me up to date on what's going on with music. Yeah.
And I will tell you that we got lucky because the Beatles' Love ended its run on July 4th of this year, so we've got to see it at the very end of its run. So I'm glad we did.
Well, I'm glad you roped us into going to see that. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and thanks everyone who was able to be with us today. And we hope to see you all April 2nd to 5th, 2025 in Chicago at the McCormick for the next ABA Tech Show, which we are actively planning. And it will be great. And as we said, it's always changing. There's more new things. But if you go to this, you're able to find out what all the other thought leaders and vendors and everyone else who's living in this space who cares about it is thinking. And so you get a lot of bang for your buck in the time and money and energy. So thanks everyone for joining us on this insightful journey with Mark today. Your time means engagement means the world to us. And if you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, tell other people, write us a review, subscribe, whatever, all that good stuff. And we have the Facebook group, Power Up Your Practice. And my book, Power Up Your Practice, is going to be coming out in August, and continue to monitor for that. Really excited in the final stages of that. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Feeling overwhelmed by admin tasks? You're not alone. Many immigration lawyers are in the same boat. That's where Staffy comes in. Over 90 law firm owners just like you have turned to Staffy for help with legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work. Now, Staffy's mission: to help lawyers find balance while growing their firm. With bilingual virtual staff and full HR support, they take the hassle out of team management and focus on what matters most: your clients and your practice. I've personally benefited from Staffy's support with 7 virtual assistants of my own across various areas of 2 of my businesses, including my law firm. Now, schedule a free initial consultation with Staffy. That's stafi.cc, and use the code RUBY. That's RUBY for $500 off. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. Join us next week for another episode where we'll continue to explore insightful strategies for success. Power Up Your Practice with us. See you next time.